Welcome to Book Club. We are covering chapter 1 of the Successful Women rather, Think Differently. So I thought this was fun, and I really like how I'm a big fan of giving an overview before we dig into the deeper things, so I know where we're going, and I appreciate that she does that. So to jump right in, right away at the beginning, she talks about these two women that I think a lot of us can relate to, with seeing ourselves in one of them, Michelle or Angela, and definitely people on our team. And I think we probably go back and forth between them, to be honest. But really, it's saying with everything else being equal, other than their mindset, what happens to these women? They kind of had equal opportunities and equal training. And one of them tended to kind of feed her fears and let risk aversion kind of run her choices. And I think that's really easy to do. And I think that feels safer. We're afraid to fail sometimes. I'm afraid to even try for how things will look. And just kind of what is an acceptable risk versus your dreams and passion. And then Angela, little more free with her thinking. She's like, well, hey, if this doesn't work out, then I'll just do something else. But I feel like a good way to sum up their mindset is Michelle tends to think, what if it goes bad? And Angela tends to think, what if it all goes right? And Jamie had said that to me several times on coaching before, like, but what if it all goes right? And so I think it's a personality thing that you got to think, what is your normal inclination? And if you do tend to be, which I am, like, oh, what if it goes wrong? You really got to police those thoughts and keep them in check. So what we say all the time, copy the successful people. And I feel like this is a great book for that, because it really just finds common threads among successful women. And it's not confusing. The same patterns repeat, which is helpful to us. And she kind of starts off with 8 of them, but all of us are going to have strengths in these areas and weaknesses in these areas. So a lot of this book, I think, is just really reflecting and self-evaluating. Am I strong in this area? Am I weak in this area? And then what can I do to improve it? And why does it matter? So courage to face fears, of course. I think we can really relate to this, and all of our fears are going to be slightly different, but it can be scary to talk to certain people. It's definitely scary to do your very first post ever. But I think it's important to appreciate what once were fears for you and how do you feel about them now. So it was really scary to do my first post. I'm not scared to post now. So when I do have to do something now that's scary, I can kind of coach myself that, like, hey, yeah, things might feel scary for a little while. I survived. It'll be fine. I'll get used to this new thing eventually, and not just kind of sit in that fear. Ability to navigate obstacles. That's an important one. We have lots of obstacles, and we talk later about obstacles versus opportunities. And I really think how well you do troubleshoot obstacles is how you're viewing them, as a roadblock or just something you got to learn that you haven't learned yet. And we have all sorts. You can call them haters. You can call them people making objections to our company or to our products. You're definitely going to have to learn to be comfortable with what some people might view as obstacles. Relationships that strengthen you. We talk all about our inner circle and making sure you're careful and intentional. Before Plexus, I was just kind of around people, like around my family, around people I worked with, my neighbors. Like, I didn't put much thought into who I was around and who I became friends with and spent a lot of time with. It was really if they were fun or not. And I'm a lot more careful now, because there's some fun people out there that don't support my dreams and goals. And for this season in my life, especially, I think it's okay to be seasonal. You got to really be careful when you're trying to grow something new, to really only have people around that are cheerleading you. And that doesn't mean they order from you. Like, guys, I have some people who are super encouraging to me and cheerlead me and have never bought anything from me. So it's really more quality of a person. Sense of purpose and vision, and then the goals that are authentic to yourself. This takes some time. Some people have a lot of clarity on exactly what goals are authentic to them and their core values and their long-term vision and purpose. I definitely had to put some hours into this, and there's a lot of great resources out there if you feel like you need more clarity there, that you can ask yourself all sorts of coaching questions and get that. Life perspective, that failure and mistakes are a normal part of the journey. This has been a hard one for me, and it kind of, I think, goes hand in hand with people who have perfectionist tendencies. because you don't want to see failure or what you would define as failure. I think that's really the key as part of your journey. And so you have to redefine what failure is and redefine what success is. And it can't be this image of everything always going your way. Like that's never going to happen. So more so like the effort and the commitment and the consistency, things like that are going to make it successful. Habit of saying no to the good to say yes to the great. I think John Maxwell talks about this. I know they talk about it in Essentialism and the book Boundaries. Both of those hit on it. And I think that's so important. And it takes a lot of wisdom and discernment to say no to good opportunities so that you have space in your life for the great ones. And I know a lot of us have had to make those kind of choices with our business. All right, so how to unsuccessful women. If we're going to study successful women, it is always helpful to know what is common among unsuccessful women. We all fall into this, all of us. So it just matters that you catch it. So feeling sorry for yourself, a victim mentality, woe is me, people are out to get me, this is so hard, versus I'm learning new things and this is a new challenge and it's not going to always feel this hard. Totally different mindset. They're quick to give up. They're willing to tolerate draining relationships in their life that really aren't bettering them and moving them towards their goals. They define success by society standards. I think this is a big one. And a lot of us have to redefine success and be okay with that. A lot of people misunderstand network marketing. And that really, are you going to hang your hopes and dreams for your family on other people's, most of which are strangers, understanding of our business, and that it doesn't fit in the quote successful, like lawyer, doctor, whatever. Those one of my brothers is a lawyer, one of them's a doctor. They don't spend a ton of time with their kids, guys. Like, yeah, it's great when they introduce themselves at a party. That's not what I'm here for. So it's important that if you want to do those things, that's great, but it shouldn't have anything to do with who's defining success standards for you. Striving only for destination. I have to check myself on this all the time. I get hyper focused on the destination and it will suck the joy out of the process and the journey. And just knowing that that's a weakness of mine, I watch out for it and have to take extra steps to be careful around it. A lack of focus and procrastination. And I just recently actually learned that procrastination is tied really closely to perfectionism. And I never, ever knew that. And I thought that was really interesting, that if you can't have it perfect, you tend to put it off. And a lot of people, I didn't always view procrastination. I kind of viewed it more as like just a willpower thing. And so knowing the cause, that it's not that you just lack willpower, maybe you just struggle with perfectionism, could be helpful. So moving on, let's make sure everybody's on mute. All right. She defines success as harmony of purpose, resilience, and joy. And I thought this was interesting. I never really heard it described like this, but your purpose, what's your impact? Why are you here? Again, some people have a lot of clarity on that right away, and the impact you might want to make at the beginning of your business could look really different in 10 or 15 years. So constantly reevaluating and knowing your kind of impact area. Resilience, she says this is probably one of the most important, like if there's a secret sauce to being successful, it's this. So there's lots of books on resiliency and podcasts, and I've encountered a few of them recently about you have to be able to bounce back from challenges, expected challenges, unexpected challenges, and how are you policing your thoughts around the challenges? I think that matters more than the things that you're going to encounter, because little obstacles can handicap you in essence if you're not watching your thoughts. And so her last section really covers, I think, some of that thought stuff. And I've learned over the past year to really coach myself with learning what questions to ask myself, taking the time to answer them honestly, even if the answers aren't always pretty, and kind of challenging my beliefs around certain situations. So I think that's a muscle you got to learn to exercise, because you're not going to naturally, I think, coach yourself if you're not trying to learn how to do it and catch blind spots. So her last few principles before jumping into some questions, these are things she wants you to live by and kind of keep in your mind as we go through the rest of the book, to kind of value yourself. So I do not downsize my dreams. Mediocrity loves company. And I have found that to be so true in life. And when you strive high and dream big, it often reminds other people that they're not, and reminds other people of their own settling, and they don't like it. So again, this goes back to inner circle. We're really being around people that tell you to dream bigger and dream with you and are excited and aren't dismissive of your dreams. Focusing on solutions, not problems. This is a constant area you got to check yourself in. Everybody can go back and forth. But are you complaining a lot? Are you feeling negative a lot? And have someone in your life who will call you on your crap. Guys, tell you the things you don't want to hear, or tell you like you're misinterpreting the situation, or you're being really negative and not solution focused, because we're all going to do it sometimes. Choosing to be authentic and kind of courageous. I like how she said we'll send a representative of ourselves out into the world sometimes. And we've for sure done that. Send out versions of ourselves that we think the situation needs, or the people need, or should be expected. And kind of taking the time to really know what your authentic self looks like, and kind of what those behaviors are, if you're leaning into that or not. That you're going to choose courage over fear. That kind of goes right along with it. You're choosing relationships wisely and nurturing them. I've definitely had to learn this. I moved every 2 or 3 years my entire life. So kind of by default, we didn't nurture a lot of relationships because we were always moving, always leaving. There really wasn't much opportunity to do so. So I've been put for a while now, and I've definitely had to learn the skill of kind of nurturing relationships. And I can't remember what book it was from, Fallon might know, but it said, I've never met a friendship of convenience. Like, if you're only around people when it's convenient, that's an acquaintance, a pleasant acquaintance. When you're there for people when it's not convenient, that's a friendship, and that's investing in nurturing them. And I'll actively seek feedback. That's not always comfortable. In fact, I think more often than not, it's not comfortable, but becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable, becoming comfortable with the fact that we all have blind spots, and you got to set up some sort of structure to catch them and grow through them and self-analyze, so you don't hold yourself back. And then lastly, I know my purpose and take actions daily and consistently towards my purpose. So that's a quick overview that kind of some of my takeaways. And as always, any of your favorite parts, you can come off mute and share with us if you're having trouble thinking of one. I have some questions. So first question I thought of was, have you ever struggled with being okay with failures in your business? And how have you worked to overcome that?
I'll go. Um, so for me, because I am very much of a type A personality, a very much of a perfectionist, I hold myself to an incredibly high standard. And so I feel like sometimes, especially when we have that personality, we look at things, okay, did I get my 3 joins for the month? Did I earn the incentive? Did I, we have like a checklist, like, okay, this is what I need to do. And so sometimes you have to take a step back and say, okay, as I'm looking at what I consider maybe a failure for a month, I didn't meet, but did I see growth in other areas? And so that's what I like to do on the first of every month. I go through the month before. What did I do to meet my goals? What did I not do? Did I reach out to enough people a day? Am I sharing Plexus enough? Am I doing enough messenger events? Am I doing enough action steps to meet those goals? So for me, another example was the April before I went Emerald. I was super, super close. And Fallon said to Rochelle, like, hey, is Debbie going for Emerald? And I didn't push for it that month because I didn't see that I could push for it. I wasn't dreaming big enough that month. And the next month it was super easy to go, but it felt like I missed an opportunity. So that was a good learning experience for like, hey, if you think you can dream big, go for it. The worst thing that can happen is you might not meet your goal that month, but you meet it the next month. So I feel like it's a good learning experience, but The feeling thing is definitely something I struggle with still because I like to be a perfectionist.
I totally agree. And the fear of failure, I think, is way worse than the failure ever is. Like, what do we think is going to happen? Like, what disaster might happen? Like, it's an ego hit's the worst thing, honestly, that can happen.
I'll go next. Something that I struggle with is that my thoughts can run rampant and I will let them take over. And she had said on page 22, her counterproductive thoughts overpowered her intentions. Actions follow thoughts, and counterproductive thoughts will always send you in the opposite direction of your goal. And that spoke so loud to me because I will what if myself to death. I will constantly second guess, even if I have a gut feeling about it. And then I will send myself into my own worries and my own insecurities because I didn't go with my first gut feeling. So just knowing that it is something that other people struggle with and actions follow thoughts and I can change my actions by changing my thoughts. It really was a positive outlook for me. So I guess I struggle with just overthinking.
I can still relate to everything, Tova, you said, Sabrina, Debbie, and the overthinking here. Yeah, that's why I would just tell myself, just do it, because I'm such a perfectionist too. Like, I can talk to myself over and over about how something needs to be done. And I'm just like, just do it. Like, just send the message, close the computer down, walk away, close your eyes, like whatever you need to do, but you actually took the action. So I have actually probably missed more goals than I actually hit. If I think of all the goals I set at the beginning of my business, and the best thing that I did for myself was to not get discouraged by all the goals that I was missing. And I think that it made it so that I could go diamond 9 months after I re-ranked gold. I feel like because I was setting such big goals and I didn't hit them, but I just kept going because I kept stretching and I kept getting uncomfortable. And every time I missed a goal, I do like what Debbie said and just like, okay, was I doing my best? Did I work my hardest? Or were my kids sick and I had to choose to take care of my sick kids? Or, whatever it was, like, was this a choice that I made? Or did it really just happen to me? And usually it was a choice that I made, and I had to be okay with the choices that I made for myself and work on doing better next time. I never found that making my goals smaller helped. Although when I was looking at diamond, I was like, okay, we're not going to look at how many points I need. I'm just going to look one step ahead of me because it felt really overwhelming. So the goal was always there, but the daily action wasn't, ooh, diamond. I wasn't thinking about that every day. It was like, okay, I need to get 3 people, help them get 3 people. All right, I need to hit gold. Okay, now I need to hit senior gold. Like, that was where my mindset was with goal setting.
I was gonna also add to that, like, I think failure is a great opportunity to regroup, and really figure out like what is going on, like what is actually going on. I think we need to ask ourselves that in our businesses. Like on page 29, when it said she failed forward, she was willing to take a step back in order to find a better path. And I feel like in our businesses, we have peaks and we have valleys. And when we're in those valleys, that is the perfect opportunity to be like, okay, how can we almost take a step back and just see, okay, what do we need to do differently? What do we need to fix? What do we need to regroup in? And that's definitely a lesson I think I'm still learning even now. So, yeah.
Is what I talked on make sense? I feel like my chapter 1 in my audiobook might be different than yours, like slightly different. Was it making sense, or you're like, no, what are you talking about? Okay. Because I've heard a few nuggets and I'm like, that was good. I don't think she said that. I can toss another question. If you like the first one, we can come back to it. Explain an area in your business where you have shown courage and overcome a fear. We all have some of these.
I don't have a specific example, but
Sorry, Helen.
I think, like you said, every single person on this call, first post is scary. Messaging people is scary. Getting rejected is scary. Talking on book club is scary. Leading calls is scary. It's just like the list keeps growing of doing uncomfortable or things that we're afraid of. And with each thing we do, it's like you realize, okay, that wasn't so bad after all.
I was going to share in the beginning of my business, I think one of my biggest fears was coaching people or like leading people. And I had this huge fear of just like, I don't know, telling people what to do, or yeah, I know it's not essentially like telling people what to do, but you know what I mean? Like guiding them, coaching them, and having somebody actually look to me for advice. It was such a huge roadblock, and it was a fear. Like I actually look back, I was evaluating the other day, and I was like, man, I think that was like probably the number one thing. When I hit gold, I stopped. Like instead of being excited, I saw a lid where I was at, and I was like, I can never go further. Like I'm just never going to do it. I can't do this. Oh my gosh. It was just such like a huge fear that paralyzed me. And so, I did a lot of growth. Thank the Lord for the church that we joined, because my pastor was so big on growth. And I saw from a Christian standpoint from both him and his wife, like both huge mentors to me, taking me to conferences and meeting John Maxwell at one of them, and like just all this huge growth. And when I was ready to step back in, it was because I had finally I think it was a prayer answered, because that was like a prayer to God, because I'm like, man, I have all these dreams, but like, why am I not equipped? Why do I not feel ready? Why do I not feel like I can do this? And so I think a lot of that fear, God delivered me from a lot of it. So when I did step back in, I was like so much more confident. And not that I knew from the beginning what I was doing, but I was just had this confidence that I can only explain that like God gave me. So that was definitely a fear that I had to overcome, because it like paralyzed me.
Well, Kylie, I can confidently say that you overcame, because you are a rock star, and I literally couldn't do this without you. But I think like my main fear with like in my business was just putting myself out there and sharing that I was doing this. Because I will admit, before I joined, like I was pretty negative about stuff like this. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So whenever I got into it and noticed like what these products could do, I finally understood why people share these products. And, it's because they love them and they work and they want to help people. And before this, like I didn't really understand that. And so my big fear to overcome was like, oh my gosh, people have heard me say like, this is silly and all that. And just putting myself out there and like having a fear of like what they would think, since they knew what I had said before. But I feel like I overcame it pretty quick.
Natalie said something to me at the beginning that has always stuck with me, and I was scared to do some posts, and she's like, what are you scared of? Are you scared of really what people will think? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess, what will they say? And she's like, if somebody is going to think negatively or talk negatively about you chasing goals and dreams and trying to help people, were they really ever in your corner to begin with? And I was like, oh, that was a big tipping point for me. It doesn't feel good to see people's true colors sometimes. I think we'd rather tell ourselves another story, but yeah, they probably weren't ever really rooting for you to begin with. So does their opinion really matter?
So good. I was just going to throw a practical one out there. I am totally an introvert. So most of my business, I have literally grown through connecting with people on Messenger. So that's something I'm working on. And yes, even as a sapphire, still have stuff to work on. But so one thing that I don't know why talking to people in person is like, I love to talk to people, but it's just connecting with people in person has always been like a struggle. So now when we go to play dates or we go to parks, I have like intentionally over the last 3 weeks, like made an effort. I'm going to connect with a mom that we meet. I'm going to message, get her information, become Facebook friends. And I literally have connected with 6 new moms in the last 2 weeks. So it's not a big thing, but yet it's, it's something that, and for me, I meet nurses in nurse groups on Facebook, no problem. Connect with them, sign them up, help them get started. No issue. I don't know what it is with meeting in person. So that's my like get out of my bubble for for the next while.
I had a really hard time doing like stories, like with my face and talking to people and like making a connection. And we did a group recently and somebody was like, okay, Emily's going to do a live. And I called Kristen immediately after and I was like, I will never complain again about putting a story up ever, 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 because a live is horrible. And she's like, no, but we're going to get there and we're going to work on it and you're going to be really good at them one day. I was like, okay. But I think like it made me realize like, okay, I'm going to get better and do it more. And then something else will be hard. So like, it's always like a continuous, like you step out of your comfort zone and you get a little more comfortable. And then there's like something else that you have to work on.
I love all these. I feel like it's kind of like a sign that you're stagnant in your business if you are comfortable sometimes, like getting comfortable, it just slows down growth. You should be, preaching to the choir sometimes. I know how life is, but like looking back, I'm always self-evaluating. I'm like, yeah, like the times I haven't grown, it's because I've been too comfortable, like, so I love, just hearing from everyone that really we all have the same issues. And if you have someone new joining, they're like, I'm scared to do this and that. It's like, honestly, we all have been like, no one's like, oh, ever, like we all went through it. And honestly, it makes you a stronger person. And I just am all for things that make you stronger. Like I loved when my husband deployed. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna just like this is gonna be so great because I'm gonna be so much stronger of a person. Stuff like that. I try to it's probably toxic to like brainwash yourself like that a little bit, but I feel like you got to look for a little good in it. So I feel like, getting the no's and doing things that are hard, like imagine just like living your life and like never doing anything that was hard, like how like lame that would be. So
Last chance, if anybody wants to share anything. We've gotten all sorts of good encouragement. It does feel good to know that other people struggle with the same thing. I think that's the whole theory behind support groups. This is our own little support group right here.
I think this is all really good. And I think something that I thought of was I read, I don't know what book it was, but I read, and it just always stuck with me, was like to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And even now, y'all, as a diamond, like I'm like Fallon, I just keep thinking about our convention training and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be okay, Jesus, right? I'm going to be okay. And then she's like, spots, we opened more spots because it filled up. Don't think anything of it. And I'm like, you probably shouldn't have told me that. So, but it's, but I know that that's growth and that's going to be, great growth. And that's where all of our successes and things start. So that's really just one quote that I've always thought of in times when I didn't want to, send the message or do the thing or whatever it was holding me back, was I was always like, okay, just do it. And even when it came to, sending messages, like what do you have to lose? Like I've always said, don't have like that list of people that you're afraid to message, message those people. Those are the people that your chicken list, you should be reaching out to all them. What's the worst that they're going to say? Not right now. And I mean, I found through the years that as you're consistent in your posting and your business and everything, like those people, they're following you and they're still seeing that, and life changes, seasons change, stuff changes to them, and they come and they want what you have to offer. So that's just something that when I was reading through this or listening to this chapter, that I was thinking about. So yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap the call, Tiffany. Thank you. Finishing us out strong. So next week, chapter 2. I'm excited to hear what everybody has to share, and I hope you guys have a good weekend.